Now is a good time to talk about the difference between a chainsaw mill and a bandsaw mill. I started with a chainsaw, a Stihl MS 660. I milled probably over 100 slabs with various bar configurations and length. I really liked it because it got me into milling my own wood, but it's hard work. There's no doubt about that. The bandsaw requires very little effort to push the carriage forward, and I actually find it pretty relaxing. Your speed will be dictated by the type or species of wood that you are cutting. Right here, this is pretty darn fast to go through this slab. I would say that I would never go back to chainsaw milling unless, of course, I had a piece of wood that was too wide for my bandsaw mill. Then I would consider using it. All right, we're getting into some interesting territory here. There's definitely some rot and some beetle damage. It's definitely in the core, so depending on how these dry, we might be able to do some type of, translucent epoxy fill or something like that to salvage this piece. So we're gonna keep on cutting and see where it goes. All right, greetings. This log is stacked and strapped and looking good. I've changed my drying method and I want to go over a couple things with you. I'm now using these ratchet straps instead of Cubinex strapping, which I used to use. This is a really cool product. They use it for like bundling trusses for houses. You can see the problem is this one has been retensioned, but as these boards dry, they can move if they're not banded super tight. So I kind of got lucky on this tree. This was cut about 2 years ago, but on some other elm trees, I lost a lot of really cool boards. Like you can see these ones here, they were done with Cubinex strapping and they have a ton of twist in them. I'm gonna lose a lot of material when I plane them down. So what I do now is I use these ratchet straps and I get them super tight, and then every week for the next couple months I'll come out and just give them a click and make sure they're tight. And even where you can see here that I have these 4x4s that have some cinder blocks, these have all been leveled. Even in the gaps here I have them banded and tight so that it kind of stays as one package. It's really important that you put your stickers towards the end of the boards. You want to keep them here on the end and then keep your strapping as close to it as possible. I don't paint the ends of my boards. A lot of people use wax emulsion or latex paint. For my climate in Reno, Nevada, I have not found that it makes a difference in the overall product, and so I don't use it. You can see here to where it wasn't really going to line up with my sticker pattern, my strap, so I just hammered one more sticker in there. It doesn't have to be exact, but you really want to try to get the strap as close to it as possible. You can see kind of over here in the back, I violated my own rule, and the stickers and the strapping are kind of off to the side. Well, that's because this cut here, the usable material is about 7 inches in. So I wanted to keep it long so that it would span my existing rack that I have here, but we're probably going to start cutting these boards right about here when they're all ready for prep. So the fact that I moved the stickers forward a little bit, you know, I might lose a little bit of material off the end. Not that big a deal. All right, so one of the most common questions that I get with the mill is, what are you in it cost-wise? That's a really hard question to answer because I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what your skill set is. Mills themselves have a price, whatever it is, Wood-Mizer, Hudson, whoever you use. There's so much more that goes into milling that you have to think about, like how are you going to move the logs? How are you going to store them? If you have a tractor, which some people do, what's the vertical lift capacity on your tractor? Like some of these logs weigh 3,500 pounds. I get people asking me, oh, that mill only does a 30-inch tree. And I'm like, whoa, where do you live? What kind of equipment do you have access to that you can move these kind of logs differently than the way that I'm moving them? So one thing that I would suggest is that get into chainsaw milling first. If you want to buy a big mill, go for it. But a little backstory on me, I watched Matt Cremona mill a tree with his steel chainsaw and make a piece of furniture out of it, and I was hooked. I'm like, that seems cool, and I absolutely love where I'm at with my milling adventure. If you start with a good chainsaw, like I have a Stihl 660, you're going to need a big saw no matter what, even if you get into milling with a bandsaw mill. So you might as well buy a 660. I would not buy an 880. That's my own personal preference because it is good for chainsaw milling, but when you want to use it for other stuff like processing trees, it weighs a lot. Go lift one at the store if you haven't done it yet. I'm going to go over a couple other questions that I get a lot. Back to the price of the mill. The mill's $7,000, but I also needed to make a trailer. I'm probably in my trailer about $2,500 because I have a welder and I have the skills and everything to do all the modifications that I needed to do to that trailer. You got to get a heavy duty trailer. That payload on that trailer is like 6,000 pounds, and I also have a diesel truck to tow it. So there's a lot of other cost in there if you want to move big logs. If you buy a chainsaw mill, you can have a little teeny pickup, go out to somewhere, mill a couple boards, bring them home, and you're in business. So it's up to you. Let's go over some of the other questions that I get. People ask, how do you drag the logs off of your trailer? So there's a tree right here. You can see under my drying deck, I have a tow strap that goes all the way out to where the trailer is parked. And essentially what you see me do in the beginning of the video is I just run a chain right out here to where my trailer's parked. I drag it off, and then I can roll the logs over to the mill. Second question, why don't you use the log dogs? The log dogs for me are kind of finicky for huge trees, which is all that I do. I'm not making boards for a side of a house. I'm only doing slabs. So what I like to do is I put these wedges in there with these metal clamps and I hammer them in, and that secures the tree. If the tree starts to wobble a little bit, you have to get it re-secured because your cut will not be clean if you end up with the tree moving while you're trying to cut it. As far as the Hudson Warrior saw is concerned, I like it a lot. It's a great saw. I was looking for the best economical saw that I could get with the widest throat. So I think the throat on this is 31 inches. It's really important when you're looking at a saw, you understand how wide the throat is. There's other manufacturers that say this is a 36-inch bandsaw mill and the throat is only 28 inches. So what they mean is that, yeah, you can cut the top of the tree off and then turn it 45 degrees and make another cut. So Hudson has treated me right. I've had some minor issues with it. They're always there to either help me fix the part, replace it. Some of the things that I have done were my own fault. I wore out the tensioner on the bandsaw. They sent me out a whole new assembly right away. Most of the problems that I have had with cutting boards have come down to me not tensioning the blade tight enough. So now I have a brand new bolt in there. Today I had a blade that only has maybe, I don't know, like 40 cuts on it. This is through pretty soft material, and it was cutting fantastic, absolutely dead on flat. 28 horsepower motor. It never seems like it's bogging down when I'm cutting most of the material that I cut. When I'm cutting ash, I gotta go slow with that. It doesn't like ash. But overall, I love the process. I love being out here in the sun. The other question or comment that I frequently get is people say, man, I bet your neighbors love you with that noisy saw. It's actually not that noisy. If you want to piss your neighbors off, run a chainsaw mill in your driveway all day long. I did learn that. But it's a gas motor. It's 28 horse. It's a little bit louder than a lawnmower. I don't do it every day, maybe like once or twice a month. And so it really isn't that bad. And am I a weird guy that mills trees in his backyard? Yeah, but some of my neighbors do some weird shit too. So it doesn't bother me, it doesn't bother them.